but for me, the era of the PlayStation 2, the Dreamcast PlayStation 2 era, it sits a little higher. That was, I mean, I've played NES, Super NES, Genesis, Sega CD, all that stuff, all those previous generations, but and I have fond memories with those. But some of my strongest memories of the simple numbers of amount of games played and finished was with the PS2 Dreamcast era.
Okay.
And coincidentally, that was also the era where, it was still in the height of companies experimenting with different IPs, different games, everything like that. Yeah, PS1, PS2, and then start tapering off around PS3.
Mm-hmm.
PS2 is where I played Ico. It's where I played, or Eco, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Shadow of Colossus, where I played that. It's where I know we mentioned that a lot on this show, but it's where I played. Not my first Tekken game, but one of my most memorable ones. There are a lot of games that I played on the PS2 and the Dreamcast. I mean, come on, I don't even have to tell you. As far as that generation, it kind of all blended together. But Dreamcast was where I played and enjoyed my first football game.
Oh, so 2K was your first
my
football
first
game.
NFL football game. Yeah, NFL 2K1, I believe.
Okay.
2K1 was the first one I played and enjoyed because it was straightforward. I mean, it wasn't as simulation heavy as Madden, but it still had that football feel. It was one where I could truly understand, okay, these are routes. They're running this route. Okay, toss it here, do this, scramble here. It felt good. It felt good. So, and of course, some of my first online experiences with Phantasy Star Online, So yeah, it's one of those where, as much as I enjoy and will always love the 360 era, the Dreamcast, PS2, and to a different extent Xbox, those eras shaped a lot more, in my opinion.
Okay.
It shaped some. It further refined my taste in games.
Now I'm gonna go a step a little bit higher than that off of yours. I like a couple the year after that, when the GameCube and the Xbox came along, because shout out to Devin Cook. He actually asked me on my show what is my favorite console of all time, and I said so far probably the GameCube, because the GameCube and the Xbox and the PlayStation, even though the Dreamcast disappeared, the Dreamcast came back in a resurgent style split among the three. Yeah. If you really think about it.
You played a lot of Sega games on those the new consoles.
Phantasy Star 1 and 2 came to GameCube. Skies of Arcadia on the Dreamcast came to GameCube. The Jet Set Radio series continue on the Xbox. Crazy Taxi. Outrun. All of these games all got spread among those three consoles. And I think that's really interesting. But the GameCube had some of the biggest classic games and the most experimental. Who thought this was a good idea and why do I love it? Like Metroid Prime.
Pikmin.
First person shooter. Metroid Prime. That's weird. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, Metroid Prime's so good. They were like, all right, let's just update Metroid Prime 1 and 2 and put it on the Wii.
Wind Waker.
Prime trilogy.
Wind Waker.
Pissed people off, but they eventually came around and loved it.
Who thought that? That came out of nowhere. You go from Ocarina of Time to this?
Yeah.
Nuts.
Especially after the controversial Space World where they showed a more gritty Legend of Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Star Fox.
GameCube was... Yeah, I would be remiss if I left GameCube out. GameCube was up there too. I didn't get to GameCube until later in its life.
Yeah.
Towards the end of its life, but I did grab up enough games.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, GameCube was a game changer itself. I think people discount it a little bit too much. It wasn't successful in hindsight, but it had some of the more experimental games on it. some of my favorite games that I own to this day.
Yeah,
You know?
I guess for me, I love that because I put a lot of money towards that console. Not only just the games, but some of the features in it. Like I bought the Game Boy attachment where you could play the Game Boy games on the big screen. I bought that bottom part because I wanted to play those Game Boy Advances on there. I went as far as the ridiculous Crystal Chronicles of buying the cords so I could have friends play with that, which is one of those, which was a terrible idea at the time. I mean, terrible now looking at it because that game was not good. But regardless, though, the fact I invested that Phantasy Star Online 2 with the 4-player multiplayer that was implemented in that edition brought a lot of my friends over a lot to play that game. I was the cool kid for a long time there for a while. Super Monkey Ball. I forgot about Super Monkey Ball was on there.
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 games that came out on the GameCube for that. Gauntlet Legacy, Dark Legacy.
And you forget, of course, we talked about it on the show, the Capcom 5. Resident Evil 4 was the first biggest chance to put on GameCube. Like, you didn't want to put it on PlayStation. You took a chance on GameCube.
And what's interesting is that they eventually put it to PlayStation 2 the following year.
They did.
But GameCube still looked better.
Yes, along with the remake of 1 and the new entry 0 that from the Resident Evil series.
In fact, Resident Evil 1 and 0, Brandy still has the original games that she had when she was younger, and she will never get rid of those because those were that's such a sentimental value to her.
Yeah,
you know, and I agree. I'm the same with Star Fox Assault and Skies of Arcadia.
And gosh, what other crazy games did they have?
Luigi's Mansion.
Luigi's Mansion was the first.
That was a launch title. People
Super
were like,
Mario
what?
Sunshine.
Luigi?
What the hell? So.
Yeah, GameCube had one of the most eclectic, diverse libraries, and Nintendo did a lot of the heavy lifting, but Capcom was in there too.
Sega had more stuff in there too.
Sega was in there.
I forgot all the Sonic games resurged on there. Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 went over there too. I forgot. Yeah.
They did the director's cut for Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. GameCube, I'm not going to say it was underrated, but it's definitely much more appreciated now because what do you hear from people when they talk about Nintendo Switch Online? They talk about, when are you going to bring GameCube online? You know, it's like probably never, but you know, they're finally getting N64 games, kind of.
Yeah, and in the fact in our last topic we talked about remaster and remakes. Some of the 2 biggest games were both on GameCube and Wii U, and that's the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. Yes, Twilight Princess was on the tail end of it, the same way as Breath of the Wild was on the tail end of the Wii U, but the point is it's still on there, and people probably prefer the GameCube edition over the Wii edition nowadays. You know.
I mean, it's pretty much mirrored. The Wii and the GameCube edition were mirrors of each other anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that generation was so interesting because remember, not just GameCube was experimenting, Xbox was new to the plate, and PlayStation just still had to hold the ground that whole time. And it showed that it still did well even when GameCube was coming in, and it is more powerful than the PS2.
Yeah, PS2 had a DVD player built in though.
That was a down for the Dreamcast too. So
and what sucks is that Nintendo didn't think that was such a big deal. Yet Panasonic had a GameCube with a DVD player also built in. And I think, what if Nintendo had kind of leaned hard into that, like an upscale model, they might have had more success.
Do you think the problem was because of the discs decision they made? Was like because of that?
I mean, not to kind of.
That was a weird choice too. I forgot about the discs. Sorry, go on.
It was like, we're finally getting away from cartridges. Discs, but not what you think. They still hold less than DVDs. Here you go. You know, and I still question Nintendo's decision making on that, but they felt that they were doing what, you know, they said they weren't going for graphics, they were going for gameplay. It was like, cool, but you can have both. You can have both, man. I don't know. I disagreed, but I wasn't. I still am. To this day, I'm not a graphics whore. So I was like, hey, it's a game fun. It is cool. Give me that controller.
Okay.